So how do you think it went today, Jimmy?
I think it went excellent. I don't think there's ever been a revenue committee hearing in Massachusetts that had as much applause as we saw today. It went really well. You know, we just brought up, a lot of people were talking about just the general tax aspects of it. And SSCP, what we wanted to bring to the table was, you know, we see this is happening. This is going to happen. Anyone who doesn't think it's going to happen is a mad person. And it's really important that as we keep having these discussions while we're talking about this tax and revenue, like, we want to think about now, how are we going to use this tax and revenue? And we want to make sure we have the court programs and the prevention education programs in place that come from the revenue that we're going to produce once we legalize marijuana to help kids. Because there's no point in scarring an 18-year-old's permanent record for the rest of their life. It doesn't do any benefit to the rest of society. It only stigmatizes someone that could be a much more productive member of society than they want to be. Last year, when we passed Question 2, we saved thousands and thousands of students financial aid. And now we're just taking it a step further, and we hope to reduce as many harms as we can associated with drugs and the policies around them, because some of those policies are hurting us more than the drugs themselves.
Excellent. Anything else you want to say? Anything shout out?
Go Mass.
Join an SSDP
Go team,
chapter.
join SSDP. We've got chapters all over Boston, and if you don't got one at US school, then ssdp.org and find out how.
Drugs that could corrode my lungs and liver, make me sick and stupid, and generally endanger my life and potentially the lives of others. And yet, I could be in prison for trying a non-deadly drug that could make me feel great or see the world in a new way. And it seems that there's a feeble justification for this discrepancy, that alcohol and tobacco, they're not great things, but they've been grandfathered into social tolerance. These toxic substances have been around forever. We can't just make them legal now. The disaster of alcohol prohibition proved this. But cannabis has been used since the dawn of man. It's mentioned in holy books that predate the Bible. So its prohibition has been shown to fit the same criteria for faulty legislation that ought to be repealed. So in light of these contradictions, I decided to do some research on why cannabis was legal in the first place. I soon found out there's simply no good reason. The history of cannabis legality in America is full of racism and outright disinformation. Around the same time I was doing my research, I noticed that DARE had been quietly shut down, and that anti-drug propaganda in America directed at young people like me has lost its teeth. There used to be commercials where someone would unroll 9 cigarettes and put them into a marijuana joint and say, like, this is what you're doing to your body. And now suddenly it's obvious that cannabis really isn't that dangerous. You won't get cancer or start doing heroin, but you'll become lazy and boring. And I fail to see why we need to put people in jail for being lazy and boring. It became obvious that government insistence that cannabis is a menace to society is simply a bankrupt idea. Any arguments for its continued illegality simply do not have a leg to stand on. So like millions of Americans, I tried it, and I enjoyed it. It has had no adverse effects on my health and productivity, and it has enriched my life. We, the young people of America, have been lied to in our childhoods. And now we've grown up, done our research, and realized the scope of deception surrounding a harmless plant. It should not be our job to come here today and cite facts and common sense to convince our government to legalize cannabis. It should be the government's job to explain why it has persisted in the face of said facts and common sense, to soldier on with outdated policy, and to have the audacity to spend millions in anti-drug campaigns that insult our intelligence. There's already a thriving cannabis industry in the state of Massachusetts. Anyone in this room could walk out right now and acquire a substantial amount with minimal effort. The question before this committee is, would you rather arrest that person or tax them? And what this bill will do is take control of the industry away from organized crime, make it safer in every aspect, create jobs, millions in taxes. And importantly, Massachusetts could uphold its revolutionary heritage, send a message to the rest of the nation that cannabis prohibition belongs in the same trash heap as alcohol prohibition. And now I'd like to address the specific question about the issue of home cultivation and why would someone go to a store when they could just grow their own. And I know from anecdotal evidence that it's a big chore to grow your own, and we, the cannabis smokers of Massachusetts, there's nothing we love more than to be able to walk down the street to our local vendor and buy product that has been certified by a state grading system and ensured that it's safe. People put some terrible stuff in marijuana. Marijuana that comes from Mexico has toxic chemicals in it that are cut into the marijuana to increase its volume, so that it's a money-making scheme that makes it more toxic. So making it legal and putting it in stores, it ensures that it's more healthy and safe. And I think you could ask any cannabis user in Massachusetts if they would prefer to go to a store or ask some shady dude on the other side of town where they want to get their cannabis from, and pretty much unanimously we prefer stores to the black market. So if it's not a question of, oh yeah, I could go and get that tax stuff, but I don't give the government my tax money. Tax me, please.
Any questions for Mr. Duffy? Mr. Duffy, if you'd come back with a question.
Sorry.
Well, firstly, I appreciate your passion on this issue, obviously, and which you have. I guess the question I have for you is this: you talked about, I'm not putting you on the spot, but you have to be testifying on this issue, so I'd just like to ask you, and anyone who comes up after is free to answer this question as well. But I guess when you mentioned about, you referenced our government and used the word even racist, which is I think a pretty heavy word to use about a government and their theory or prosecution of cannabis use. But I guess my question is this, and I'm sure there are examples, but I'd like to know specifically how many. I've traveled throughout Canada and Mexico. I've been able to drink there, not be able to buy marijuana that I'm aware of. I've traveled extensively throughout other parts of the world, Europe, Asia. I've been aware of every country I've been to, you can purchase and sell alcohol. So it's not just the United States government that sort of has this antiquated position about marijuana. It seems to be that it's pretty predominant throughout most of the world, at least the world I've been to. And I guess my question to you is just specifically is, am I wrong about alcohol being freely available around the world? But am I wrong about the fact that marijuana is not? It's not just our government. And if there are other countries, I'd like to know, I'm sure you can find one or two, but I mean, can you buy marijuana legally in Mexico, Canada, England, France?
Yes.
Anyone? That's what I want to know. That's what I'd like to hear, because I'm not aware of that.
Well, you mentioned racism. That's referring to Harry Aslinger, the first head of the Narcotics Bureau of the country, and he testified before Congress that marijuana causes Negroes to look at a white man's wife twice, something to that effect. There's a massive campaign of yellow journalism, and they used the term marijuana because it was the Mexican term. People were mainly concerned about Mexicans using marijuana. So if you do the research, there is a great deal of racism in the history of legality. And as far as around the world, I believe it was Nepal, there was some country in the Himalayan region that cannabis was legal. You could go to cafes, much like Amsterdam, and purchase it. And there's a massive amount of tourism from the Western world there. Ronald Reagan swooped in and gave the government there millions of dollars to make it illegal and shut down that industry. So, I mean, it was false pretenses that made cannabis illegal in the first place, and as American influence has spread around the world, we've been carrying that same influence of the drug war. People look to America as a point of inspiration, and the real thing is that you go anywhere in the world, people can get cannabis. The question is, it's just not that hard. And the question here is, because the industry is already there, and nothing's going to stop it. The drug war has not stopped it. Pumping billions of dollars into enforcement is not going to make marijuana go away. It's just not going to happen.
Well, let me stop it. My only question is, and I'm sure there are other people who can answer this later, I don't want to hear a mass outcry from the audience at one time, but I understand you can get marijuana anywhere. That's probably true. I'm asking legally, any citizen, like this bill, how many countries have a bill just like this? You can walk in and buy it in the store and be taxed. That's what I'm curious. I don't think it's just our government that does not allow this, but I think it's fairly predominant throughout the world that the purchase of it is illegal, at least for many individuals. I understand Amsterdam has different rules. I understand that there are certain states that allow the prescription, a medical prescription. But this is a little bit different than I think most countries have. That's just the point I was trying to raise, and if that was wrong.
Absolutely. I'm not aware of a country where it's legally taxed and regulated, but it's really a question of, do you want this industry to continue under the supervision of violent organized crime, or do you want it to continue under your supervision?